the start of a new virtual program called Art Apart, Crafts for Adults. This episode of the program is going to be talking about 2 different fall crafts for adults. I really wanted to continue on the idea of crafting programs at the Boulder City Library, but doing something virtually, something that's easy for people to do at home. And I wanted to give some step-by-step instructions for cute craft ideas that you can use to decorate your homes, gift to friends or family, or so on and so forth. So just something to do while everyone's still quarantining together. Hopefully someday we can make art together, but for now I'll make a monthly craft video and maybe some extra craft videos on the side that we can throw in every once in a while so that everybody can kind of get their creative juices flowing and have fun. The goal of this program is to inspire people with different crafts. You can craft along with me or make your own crafts that are inspired by these ideas and share them to our Instagram and Facebook page and see what everyone's making. Let's see. So this month we will be making pinecone wreaths and crocheted pumpkins, and I'll include a timestamp below on this clip if you want to skip to either project. So this is the final craft for the pinecone wreaths. It's just a wreath made out of different found pine cones and store-bought pine cones, and then with a little ribbon. So I'll show you how to make that in the first clip. And we have some of our crocheted pumpkins. These were featured in our Boulder City Library monthly newsletter, and there is a large size and a small size, and I'll show you a pattern and a way to make both of these. You don't necessarily have to know how to crochet to make these pumpkins. You could knit, you could use different fabric, and I'll just show you a way to make these cute little decor pieces. So for supplies, I know that some people aren't venturing far from home, so I'll also leave online supplies linked down in the description below if you're not venturing out to the local craft store at all. So you'll be able to access different materials for these online, or in the case of the pine cones, you can forage for your own materials yourself. So what if I don't know how to craft or crochet? I'm going to give follow-along instructions. I'll have more close-up videos of how to make both of these crafts. And I'll also give a material list down in the description below along with those links that I mentioned. But here at the Boulder City Library, we also have a really great resource if you're interested in learning how to crochet from a beginner's perspective or learning how to knit from a beginner's perspective. We have a really great resource called Creativebug through the library, and they have a whole bunch of instructive videos. It's through Joanne's craft stores, and they make all of these instructive videos, so they give step-by-step basics for anyone who wants to learn how to do any kind of craft. But I'll be linking a crochet sampler daily practice posted by Twinkie Chan, and she goes through the beginning steps on how to crochet and shows you how to use many different stitches if you want to dive into learning how to crochet yourself. I'll also leave some little clips of how you can sign up for Creativebug, give you a step-by-step on how to sign up with your library card through the Boulder City Library.
You follow along with the screenshots that I took of the Boulder City Library homepage. You can see that under the Books, Movies, and More tab, there is a little link to Creativebug, and it'll take you to this home screen where you can input your Boulder City Library card, and then once you input that, you can create your own account for Creativebug and find a whole bunch of their different resources of paper crafts, quilting, knitting, crochet, and so on and so forth to give yourself a little bit of inspiration. This here is the link to the Crochet Sampler, a daily practice by Twinkie Chan that I use to learn some new different stitches in crochet to oomph up my pumpkins that you'll see later in this video. Alrighty. There's Creativebug. If you have any questions on how to sign up for Creativebug, you can give us a call at the Boulder City Library. Our number is 702-293-1281. Happy crafting!
Alright, so we'll jump into our first craft. It'll be the pinecone wreath. So we'll insert our craft together along right here. So first up, we'll be making a pinecone wreath. And the first step to this is to gather some different resources. So for my crafting resources, I have a mix of real pine cones that I foraged from ABC Park here right next to the library, and some pine cones that I also ordered off of the internet. So when I ordered these from Amazon, these pine cones ended up being a lot smaller than I thought they were going to be, but they act great as kind of filler to fill in between the regular sized pine cones. So I decided to go and forage for my own pine cones as well. You could go to like the local craft store, like Joann's or Michael's here in town, or in Henderson, I guess, and see what kind of pine cones you can find, but I think it was just as fun to go out and find my own pine cones. So an important thing to think about when you are foraging for your own pine cones is to disinfect them. So I read online that in order to disinfect your pine cones, it's good to stick them in a 200-degree oven for about 1 to 2 hours, and then this will disinfect them. It will kill off any moths or bugs or any other yucky things that may be inside of your pine cones. So then they're nice and sterile. So all of these, I have already done that when I did the first batch for my prototype of this craft. And then other crafting supplies that are mandatory are some kind of wreath hoop or embroidery hoop to stick your pine cones to. I ordered this smaller hoop in a 2-pack from Amazon, and I'll leave that link down below. But you could get a larger hoop, maybe to fit many more pine cones, if you're going on a more large scale size than I am. Or even if you have like an old embroidery hoop lying around the house that you're not using, this would be great for a little wreath too. You could just upcycle that and turn it into something of your own. Item on this craft supplies list is some kind of ribbon that you can use to create your loop at the top of your wreath so that you can hang it onto a door or onto the wall. I have 2 different tones of ribbon because I thought it would just kind of jazz up, and I had this in my craft storage. They were left over from when I was crafting for my wedding, so I was just using what I had. You could also use twine if you want a more rustic look. Now this step is totally optional, but if you wanted to, you could also paint your wreath. So I pulled out, this is just what I had at home, some craft paint, and these are in some fall colors. So I have a red, an orange, I have a red, an orange, and a yellow, and you could maybe speckle this on your pine cones to give it more of a fall feel, but this would also be great if you just changed out the ribbon for a white ribbon or maybe a red ribbon, and then if you were to maybe stamp some white paint on the pine cones to look like they're frosted, that could be a really fun take on this fall craft too. You could turn it into a winter craft as well. Okay, so the first step of this craft is to heat up your glue gun. You can see I have my little mini one here on the other side of the table where I had plug space. So I'll just pull that on over so that I have it near me. So to start, you want to pick a space on your wreath that will act as the bottom, and I decided to make the bottom a focal point of my wreath. So I chose 2 pine cones that I thought looked pretty similar in shape and size. So I want to go for kind of more of these medium-sized pine cones. Some of these larger pine cones, there's a reason why I didn't use them when I first started on my first wreath. They're a little bit harder to get glued to this wire frame. They might be easier to glue onto a wooden frame, but it might just be the size of the frame that I have. So maybe if you find a larger frame, it would be easier to glue on some larger pine cones as well. But so right now, I'm not going to use these big boys. I'm going to stick to these more medium-sized. So I like the look of these 2, and I think that they would make a nice center for my wreath. So I'll just lay out where I would like these to fit on my wreath. So I'm kind of putting them in the center of the rings, and then I'll fill in some of the gaps with the smaller pine cones later. But so to start just with 1 pine cone, I'm going to take one of them off and then take this one off. And with my little mini hot glue gun, I'm going to just glue right onto the wire where the pine cone will rest, and then lay it on down.
And my glue gun is not too terribly hot, so it'll get tacky pretty quickly. But if you have a glue gun that gets very, very super hot, you may want to leave this for a little bit longer to set. And then just to make sure that everything gets secure and there's lots of hot glue in those nooks and crannies and to make sure there's a lot of hot glue in the nooks and crannies, I like to take the hot glue gun and hot glue on this side as well. So kind of securing the back of the ring to the pine cone as well. And for these bigger ones, this is good because it helps to secure them down because they have a lot of surface area as opposed to the very small ones. So they need a little bit more glue since they're a little bit heavier. All right, so I'll repeat this process for my second pine cone, kind of making a little V shape between the two of them. So then that's something that'll start my kind of symmetry here on my wreath. And while I wait for these to dry, sometimes I'll pick up a couple more pine cones and see maybe where I might want the next ones to go. That kind of looks nice. Maybe in the center, maybe sticking out a little bit. It is definitely up to you where you want to put your pine cones, the size of pine cones that you use, and how much filler pine cones you want to insert here. Sometimes your pine cones fall off and it's sad. Okay, so I secured that second pine cone on, and now we're starting to get a base to our wreath. So now let's choose another. Okay, so I popped on a couple more pine cones to kind of start the base for our wreath. And at this point, you can start adding in some different pine cones. You can keep on going up and around with the pine cones that you've gathered. But this is where you can take kind of the smaller pine cones and fill in the different gaps that you have. And especially with teeny tiny little ones, you can start filling in the gaps until you kind of have that more full look. And the tinier the pine cone, I think it's easier to glue on, but you just kind of continue doing that until you reach a very full kind of wreath look. So you don't necessarily have to get the smallest pine cones from Amazon to do this craft. You can find tiny pine cones around the neighborhood and just use forged pine cones for this. If you have a bigger wreath, you can fit many more bigger pine cones on your wreath too, kind of tucking them into the larger pine cones that you find. And that can make it easier for you to kind of fill up your wreath. One step that you will want to do when you still have some room at the top is make a length of ribbon that will act as your hook to your wreath. And you'll want to make enough so that you have a good loop, but also that you can tie a bow at the top if you would like. Only if you would like, though. This is totally up to you what your craft will end up looking like. You can add 2 ribbons like I did in the previous wreath, or you can just add 1 like I'm going to do here. And just loop that through the top. I think I looped mine previously through this loop. So loop that through the top, make the 2 strands even, and then I'll lay this down. And then create just a little bow any way you like. So now I just have a little bow. At the top of my wreath, and that can be used to hang it somewhere. You don't have to be limited with this wreath either. You don't have to make the whole thing pine cones. I played around with the idea of adding some flowers to this top part of the wreath, or also you could maybe wrap some burlap around. Maybe that might look cute. But just do whatever you would like with your wreath and decorate it in whatever way you would like to. This might look cool with maybe some fall leaves or some different foliage that you may have in your craft storage. Maybe some twinkly lights would be fun to add to this, but but do whatever your little heart desires. And then again, just for our final shot, once you finish putting all your pine cones or other crafting materials on, you'll have a wonderful wreath just like this. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the next craft, which is crocheted pumpkins. Okay, so for our second craft, we're gonna talk about these cute little crocheted pumpkins. They're super easy to do and don't take too terribly many supplies to make. And I had a lot of fun learning some new crochet stitches from Creativebug, so I highly recommend you check out the videos that I link in the description box. I had a lot of fun learning this new stitch, which is I believe this one is a single crochet stitch, but working in the back loop to make this kind of ribbing here. And then for my big one, you might not be able to see too much of the detail on camera, but this is a half double crochet, also working in the back loop like that previous one. And I think that these just turned out really fun and really cute. I think that the plush pumpkins have been very trendy this year in different home goods stores, and it's fun to be able to make one on your own. So to make this craft easy, the first step is to make a pattern for your pumpkin. So for the large pumpkin, I have a pattern that is a 7 by 16 inch pattern. And then for the smaller pumpkin, I have a 5.5 inch by 12 inch pattern. So I'll show you how to make the smaller pattern. For these patterns, I wanted to make it in a way that both knitters and crocheters could make a rectangle to make a pumpkin, or you could, if you're not crafty with yarn, you could just cut out a square of fabric and then make your pumpkins with fabric as well. So I wanted to make it accessible to all different kinds of crafters. So to make both patterns, all you'll really need is 2 pieces of paper and a ruler. This is my very nice Boulder City Library Reading Rules ruler. So I'll start by just taping my pages together. This one is a little bit easier since it only has to be 12 inches long as opposed to the 16 inches long. And then with my ruler, I will mark where 12 inches is at. And I'll cut across here. And now for the height of this pattern, I'll mark where 5.5 inches is at. And we will cut across here. All right, so this is our 5.5 inch by 12 inch pattern, and this is what I use to make the smallest. If you want an even smaller look, this pumpkin is 5 inches by 11 inches, so it kind of varies the height and fatness of your pumpkin, if you will. But you can play around with these different sizes. These are just the measurements that I used for both the large and these are just the measurements that I used for both the large and this small white pumpkin. So for this program, I pre-crocheted at home 2 different swaths of fabric. So I have this one, which is the small size, and then I have this larger one, which will be our larger pumpkin. So the first step of this is that we want to tuck in our loose ends here from our crocheted fabric. So I will take my tapestry needle and I'll just loop a piece of tape around the end of this so that I can easily feed it through. This is a tactic that I learned from my great-grandfather when he would help us when we were making quilts at Thanksgiving. Definitely a good memory that I like to think about around this time of the year. All right, so I'll just weave this end in through a couple of stitches so that we can hide it but also secure our project, and then I will also weave it back through a couple of stitches. So then it's nice and secure and our project won't come unraveling anytime soon. And then I'll do this for the other end as well. Great. Another day, the same cardigan. We ran out of space on our memory card last night, but we'll just pick up right where I left off. So we're working on the smaller pumpkin here, and as you can see, I took the two ends of the loop, the two ends of the fabric, and I sewed them together to make a loop. So now we have a little cuff, a little crocheted cuff here. So now the next step is to take just one side of this, which will act as your bottom, and we'll take another length of thread and sew it through some of these. We'll sew it through some of these loops at the bottom and then cinch it in to make the bottom of our pumpkin. So taking just a length of thread, I'll run it through my embroidery needle again. With my length of thread, I'll just take one side of this and start weaving it through some of these loops here. So I'm going through these outside loops. And then we'll cinch this together. Okay, now I have that looped, so it's making one loop together, and then once we pull on these cords, it'll cinch together just like that. So you'll want to cinch it together and tie it in a square knot, just so that we close up this hole. So now you can either leave these out and just flip this inside out, or you can tuck them in. Either way, works just fine. So now we have something that looks like this. You have a little cavity, and then you have one end that is sewn up. So to fill our pumpkins, we are going to take some sort of stuffing. I have this big bag of original polyfill, a premium polyester fiber fill, but if you don't have this, you can get a big bag of this for like $5 at the craft store or on Amazon. But if you don't want to buy polyfill, you could maybe upcycle an old pillow that you have and rip out some of its filling, and so on and so forth. You could think of different creative ways to fill your pumpkin. Maybe you have a whole bunch of old socks, and you just want to stuff them on in there. Think about what you might have lying around the house and see what you can fill your pumpkins with. So I'm going to just rip out some of this. I probably won't need this much, but I'm gonna take it into smaller clumps to start filling our pumpkin. And I'm kind of spinning it around to see like which parts are lumpy, which parts may need a little bit more filling. That'll be a pretty plump little pumpkin. Taking a little out, seeing how it'll go. So that looks pretty good. So now you have a little filled pumpkin. And we will stitch up the top the same way that we did the bottom. Okay, so I got that threaded all around, so now, just like the bottom, I will take this and tie it on together. Making sure to stuff the little stuffing back on in there. So just try and tie it as tight as you can. You see that I still have a little tiny hole there, but we'll use that later. Again, I'm going in with my double knot. And then for these top threads, I'll just kind of trim them even. But to make sure that double knot doesn't come undone, I just kind of wind this extra thread around my finger and shove it on into the pumpkin with the rest of the stuffing. Okay, so there is our little baby pumpkin. So now let's decorate our pumpkin. So for these other ones, I decided to go and just forage for some twigs outside to use as my little pumpkin stem. But you could, if you wanted to, you could use maybe a pipe cleaner or a cinnamon stick, or if you have a wine cork, that might look really pretty. But I do have some extra sticks that I had found. So I just found, this was a larger stick, and I just took an X-Acto knife and I just kind of cut it, I scored it, and then broke it so that I could stick these on into my pumpkin. Bar stick in the top. And like I said, you could use a cinnamon stick, a wine cork, maybe some pipe cleaners that you have at home. So there is our little stick. So you could stop here if you want, but I also liked to add a little bit of ribbon. I thought that looked really cute. This is some tulle that I had left over from my wedding as well. I am repurposing a lot of different crafting materials, and I think I'll add this, but you could also, if you wanted to, add maybe a ribbon, or possibly a little bit of twine. You could maybe mix and match, make them a little rustic maybe. Actually, that might be very cute. Let's try some twine. And I'm going to double up on my twine strands just to give it a little bit extra oomph. Just make yourself a little DIY rustic pumpkin. So now that I did my initial knot, I'm going to pull my stick out of the pumpkin so that I can just make a little bow. Alrighty, there's a cute little bow, and then I'll just stick that back on in and adjust my bow just however you like. Alright, there's our first little rustic pumpkin. Like I said, you could use any kind of different bow on top, whatever you may have at home. And then I'll just do the second pumpkin really quick off camera. It's the same steps, just with a larger crocheted fabric. Okay, I finished up that second pumpkin, so here are our two different sizes. These I did make a little bit short when it came to the width of the pumpkin, so you can see that they're a little bit shorter than this one that I have back here. This one went to the full 7 inches, and I used a coarser thread too, so it kind of changed up the texture. So you can use different weights of thread to change up your texture. You can alter the pattern that you make to make your pumpkins bigger or smaller. So I encourage you guys to definitely just play with the pattern and see what kind of pumpkins that you will come up with. And these are super cute for just little couch decor. They're kind of like adult stuffed animals, if you will, but those are super popular right now in home decor. So I hope you guys enjoy making some pumpkins of your own. Awesome, thanks.
Thanks for making it to the end. Thanks for crafting along with me. We have various books in our library collection on different paper crafts, different seasonal crafts. If you want to browse our catalog online or give us a call and see if you can pick any of those books up curbside. We also have some amazing magazines as well that feature crafting and DIY and so on and so forth. But I really think Creativebug is a great resource to learn how to craft, learn how to do some basics, and give you some ideas for holiday presents, ways to pass your time, crafts and home decor, and it's great for especially beginners. I want to know what other crafts you want to see, so go ahead and leave us a message either on this video or message us through our social media pages. We have Facebook and Instagram, the Boulder City Library, and let me know what you want to see next for crafts. We're thinking about doing some holiday crafts for gifts next month for December, so if you have any ideas, if you want to share any ideas, go ahead and give us some suggestions down below. Alright, thanks everybody. My name is Kaylee and I'm the Information Services Assistant at the Boulder City Library in Boulder City, Nevada, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye!